Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Sorry. How's everybody doing this morning? I've always wanted to be a rock star, so I'm like, how's everybody doing tonight? But they generally put me in the morning. Guess I'm too perky. My name is Ash. This is User Experience Pitfalls. I do not work for Activision. This is just some free advertisement for some 1980s products that they have. So if you like Pitfalls. You can find me at ux-ash. I go by they, them pronouns, so if you're referring to me, just refer to me as a human. A lot of people ask, what does that mean? Do I call you Mr.? Do I call you Mrs.? I prefer Admiral. So, whatever you prefer. I have been in the UX industry for over a decade now, about 14 years. I originally was in human-computer interaction, and then I moved kind of more to user-centered design and user experience. I love mixing technology with psychology so that I understand how the people that are using my products, how they think, how they work, and how I can make their lives a little better. I work for Valorum Reply. You can find us at valorumreply.com or reply.com for career opportunities, or if you need some consulting in any of these. We also do a lot of Microsoft implementations as well, but we do data and AI, IT modernization, digital workplace, product transformation, that's where I am, and security. So, I also want to thank y'all in the pink. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to our sponsors as well and to our volunteers. Let's give them a round of applause. This has been a great conference so far. All right. Now all your applause next will be for me. You can save that to the end. I sometimes will speak a bit fast when I get excited about something. So if I start doing this, just do one of these, like just slow me down. And if I see this, I will know, okay? If you do this, I'll know I'll be doing great. So, okay. Story time. So when I first started at my first job, I was brought into a team and I was doing what I thought was gonna be just really cool user experience stuff. And within the first couple months, I was approached by a team that said, hey, the CIO said we needed to talk to the UX team. We've been working on this for 6 months. We go live in 2 weeks. What can you do? I said, I can pray for you. Because they had done all this work and they just wanted me to put a bow on the project. And no amount of bows and prettiness can make up for a broken workflow, product design for the wrong person, etc. Right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a level set, we're going to do some techniques overviews, and then we're going to talk about pitfalls with solutions. Because most of you are here because you want to hear what goes wrong. This is only a starting point for UX, right? So if you are interested in this topic, I'm going to give you some resources at the end. Make sure you look up these techniques. I'm going to be flying through these. I have workshops on almost every one of these points except for a few of them because they're just so robust. All right, so we're going to start off with some terms. I'm going to ask for a little bit of interaction, okay? I was told it might be a little lukewarm, but who are users? And I'm not talking about drugs, but who are users in a product, a software product? Like, who are your users specifically? Oh, we'll wait it out. Yes? People who want to book a time at a restaurant, exactly. Who else? Teachers and students? People who do inspections on construction sites. Who makes products specifically for developers? A few of you. Who makes products specifically just for you? A few of you. Exactly. But for the most part, you're hired to make something for someone who is not you. So our users are all those folks that will be using our software. We are not designing our products for everyone. We are designing our products specifically for particular tasks that these people need done. So what is usability? Anything that helps the users do their job. Yeah. how well the software works to do what it says it's supposed to do, right? When we talk about usability, there are several principles, and one of the first principles is effectiveness. Now, a lot of people get effectiveness and efficiency intermingled. Effectiveness is how well something does at getting its desired outcome. Now, efficiency is how much waste you reduce in a process. Now, oftentimes, if you blend them, you're going to get something really great. But a lot of people focus on efficiency over effectiveness. And I put it like this. If I am in a rowboat and it is taking on water, I can have the most efficient water bailing process, but it might be more effective to patch the hole, right? So they work together, but you can't always just focus purely on efficiency. Learnability. What does this mean? It might be a made-up word, but what does it mean? Yes? You're looking at, the barriers to entry. How easy is it to come in and just absorb and understand what's going on? How intuitive is it? How fast can I learn it? What about safety? And now, in this one, a lot of people do get confused. It's not that you turn your computer on and it zaps you, right? That is part of it. But what else do we mean by safety of usable products? Don't what? Don't delete the hard drive, yes. So yeah, don't do anything malicious. How hard it is to do something incorrectly. Yes, error prevention. Letting people know where they are in the system so they can navigate around and feel safe. Understanding where they are in the process. Also, it's security, making sure that they know that the information that they're putting in is secure. And then also, if I accidentally hit a button or I press back, when I come back again, does it still have my information, or do I have to fill out that form again, right? So those are elements of safety. Then we have memorability, which is how easy it is to remember. A lot of people are a little confused by this one, like, why does this matter if learnability is good? Well, if learnability is good, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. This is probably not a software that you all use too often, but in the United States, we have to do our taxes once a year. And instead of the government telling us how much we owe them, we have to play a game with them where we guess how much we owe them, right? And so we use this tax software to play this game with them. And you only use it once a year. So it needs to be highly memorable and highly learnable. And you'll notice something that is poor memorability if you have to leave Post-it notes on your desk to remember a command or something like that. Those are lower memorable systems. And then finally, there's satisfaction. And that is how satisfied you are with the product, how well you believe it works for you. It's your perception of the product. All right, so what's user experience? I just told you what usability means. What's user experience? Is that the same thing? It's a trick question. It's not. Yeah, it's all the things in the context of what you're trying to get done. So to kind of put it this way, I asked a developer friend of mine, what is the difference between usability and user experience? And he said to me, usability is the saddle and the stirrups. User experience is how it feels to be on the horse. And this is very close. I would move that around a little bit and say UI is what the user sees, touches, and interacts with. It's everything that you are interacting with. User interface, right in the name. Usability is how well those function and all of those pieces that we said before, learnability, memorability, efficiency, etc. And user experience is how it feels to use those in context. So, for instance, I don't know how much horsemanship you have in Stockholm, but if you were to use a racing saddle or a barrel racing saddle on a long trail drive, you'd be very, very uncomfortable because they're built differently. Now, the racing saddle and the touring saddle might be both extremely usable, but your user experience is going to be god-awful if you're on that racing saddle for a couple hours, okay? It's just context matters is the point there. So always start with user goals and business goals in mind. What do we mean by business goals? I know everybody's business is to make money, so you don't need to tell me that one. I got that one. But what might be a business goal of your business for a particular piece of software? Get things done, sure. And yours, you were trying to, your business goal was to maybe make a commission off of a number of tables. So you want to increase the number of tables that are sold to restaurants or what have you, or that are whatever. So sorry, I'm not in the restaurant business. I'm not very articulate in that. I'm sure, yeah, you just want to sell tables, right? So that's the business goal. It's what the business wants to have done. Then we have the user goals. Is the user goal and the business goal the same? Do they want to do the same thing? Is the user's goal to give you money? Yes, it does depend if it's an internal or external user, but generally, my only goal in life is not to make my employer happy or to give companies money. I have something that I want to get done. In that case, I want to go to dinner with my friends. I want to celebrate my mother's birthday. I want to do something. And your product is the means by which I do that. So your company's goal is not to celebrate my mother's birthday. So we have different goals. However, that overlap, that is what user experience is interested in. We want the return on investment for the company. We want the return on experience for the user. And that's where value is created. You're getting something. I'm getting something. It's a good relationship. We're getting something out of it. Now, there's a third piece that's just as important. It's called technical feasibility, right? I could want to think my reservation into existence. It will not happen. So really, what we're looking for is this sweet spot here. So you need to have business people talking to end users, talking to developers and product teams. Boom. Okay. So good UX is built around users. So how do we understand our users? We use user research. We want to discover who our users are. It's not just everyone. We need to figure out what their needs are, what their contexts are, what they're trying to accomplish. I want to accomplish that I want to get a table at this restaurant at this specific time, and I want to let the restaurant know that I am having a special celebration, so could they please make sure they do X, Y, or Z? What constraints are they working with? What's the culture here? So an internal application, I might have a culture where my employees are very suspicious of management, or they have a really team building culture, or they are very proud and they want to feel like experience experts. And so if you build something that looks like a play school system, they're going to be very insulted, right? What environment are they working in? Are they wearing gloves as they're working with your interface? Are they in a very noisy environment? Are they constantly getting interrupted? All of that impacts their workflow through your system. So if you have a system that makes them keep a lot of information in their head, or have to realize where they are in context just by with little context clues on the screen, and they get interrupted, that will impact their workflow because they might not understand where they are. If it has a timeout, etc., all impacts what your system needs to do, and that's environment. And then skill level. What sort of technical mastery do they have? What sort of mastery over the subject matter do they have, etc.? What sort of vernacular and vocabulary do they have? And then what's their current process? How do they currently do things? And should our process change or should it emulate? If they go A, B, C, we probably don't want to do C, B, A. And then problems and workarounds in their current process. So we don't want to replicate what they already hate, okay? And if they already have workarounds, maybe we can implement some of those and save them time in the next iteration of the product. And then successes and necessities of their current process. What are they doing well? What needs to be in the next product? A lot of times users will forget to tell you the things that are going well and the things they need because they'll just assume you know, or they'll just assume everybody knows. So let's talk about quick ways to inject UX. This is the meat of the talk. Now that we're all level, let's talk about technique. So one of the easiest ways to inject UX is the 6-up. The 6-up is a design technique where you sketch things in 6 different ways. So if I were to try to solve a problem, I could be sketching a design, a workflow, even a particular component, 6 different ways. I literally just get a piece of paper or a whiteboard or a tablet, and I make 6 little sextants there. And so I have my sections here that I will fill up with ideas of how I could solve that problem. And they're just sketches, there's not really anything in here. And by the 4th one, you're gonna start really stretching and you might get a little wild. And then by the 6th one, you might be combining ideas. And the idea here is not to pick one. The idea is to get your brain to think about other things than just your first thought. Now, you might still go with this option, but it lets you examine the problem in different angles and think about it in different ways and force yourself to really say, like, is that really the best way to do this? What problems may that have that these might not? So that's the 6-up. The next thing is designing iteratively, meaning don't get too attached. You know, it's okay if someone calls your baby ugly, right? So then we have our user interviews. In the railroad industry, we called them the go and see. In mine, we just call them user interviews. But essentially, that context is we actually go to where the users are to see their environment, to see the things on their desk, et cetera, rather than bringing them into like a sterile focus group environment. Like to watch them work, we can do that remotely. And we note their processes and then have them teach us. So with the user interviews, and I have a whole course on this, so we're going to go really fast. The biggest thing that I find is making sure that the folks that are going with me identify their biases. So basically this is, what do you already expect to happen? Because if you don't examine your biases and you don't know what you already expect to happen, sometimes you will run into confirmation bias, where you don't really realize what you're expecting, but you're looking particularly for evidence that supports your point of view. So if you know your biases, you identify your biases, you can kind of help watch, like, oh, am I seeing that because I want to see it, or am I seeing it because it's real? And make sure you're looking at other things too. So try to leave those assumptions at the door and avoid asking leading questions. Does anybody know what a leading question is? I'll give you this. Everyone knows what a leading question is, right? That was a leading question. But yes, I had some hands go up. So way in the back, the pink shirt. Yes. Yeah, so a leading question is where you're basically, as you said, leading the user to here's the correct answer, and you're not really accepting any other answers to it. It's, do you prefer A or B when the answer might be C? It's, some users find this helpful. What do you think? Well, I just told you, you better find it helpful, mister. So you're in the front row, so I'll pick on you a little bit. You also have USA all over yourself, so you know. I'm going to assume you're an American. I didn't think so. But anyway, we're not proud of our country. The 90-10 rule. Does anybody know what the 90-10 rule is in interviewing? It's okay if you didn't. This is my least answered question. You're like, good. What? Talk and listen. That's right. So the participants should be doing 90% of the talking, and you should be doing 10%. In a normal conversation, it should be about 50-50 for an actual conversation. But we don't want a conversation with the user. We want to listen. We want to get their feedback, right? And then we want to talk about the present. If you like Spaceballs, we're at now, okay? The reason why we talk about the present is because users are terrible, and humans are in general, of figuring out their future behavior. We like to think about our ideal selves. When I came to Stockholm, I said, I'm going to work out in the gym at least once while I'm here. How many times have I gone to the gym? None. Because I like to think of my ideal self. I even really set the bar low, and I still didn't do it. I'll give you an example in work context. I was doing a usability study. I brought a BA along, and we had a customer was having some trouble, and the BA jumped in and wanted to be helpful and said, well, wouldn't you just contact the help desk at this point? And the user said, yes, that's what I would do. I would contact the help desk. And I said, how many times in the past 2 years have you had a problem and contacted the help desk? And they said, none. I've had problems, but I don't contact the help desk. I've never contacted the help desk. So what do you believe now? Do you believe that in the future they're going to contact the help desk, or do you think they're just going to try to write it out? What do you think? Write it out. That's right. So talk about the present, because we like to think very well of ourselves and what we will do. I like to use this, we call this the master apprentice. So you like think of a master artisan and an apprentice, a craftsperson. And that's essentially what we're doing in a user interview. We're saying, the user, you know your work better than I do. Even if I've been in the business 20 years, even if I designed the product, like I may know the ups and downs of it, but you know how you're going to use it. Yes, I'm making eye contact with you. I'm going to make you uncomfortable. No. Sorry. So you know how you're going to use it the best. So what we want to do is kind of distance ourselves from the expert role. Because if they assume we're the expert, what are they going to do? Yeah, they're going to ask you questions. They're going to say, well, this is how I would do it, but I don't know. Or they might start just asking you all these questions about the system, and you just kind of have to push that back and go, you know, I really am interested in how you use the product, not, you know, and et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of back off from the product. Pretend if I wasn't here, what would you do next, right? So that's those interviews. And that's for usability testing, it's very similar to interviews, except for you are testing a particular product. You could be testing a prototype, you could be testing an existing system, you could be testing just like paper wireframes. Or you could just be talking through the process with the user. So you're giving those user prototypes and tasks and note where they get stuck and where they succeed. So usability testing, a lot of people do it. A lot of people do it poorly. But even a bad usability test can help you a little bit as long as you're not asking super leading questions. So here's some tips. Have them do the talking, and you try to remain neutral as possible. Still your face. Y'all seem to be doing a pretty good job of that right now, so good. All usability experts. And try to remain neutral. If you're really excited about what they just did, or if you're like really frustrated with what they just did, just maintain the faces you're using right now. Now, do not lead the user or provide training. This is something that is the hardest because you want to help the user. You want your product to be successful. But the thing is, when they're actually using the product, are you going to be sitting next to them? No. So we have to see what happens when we're not around. Have a user speak their thoughts aloud. So they might be saying like, yeah, I would need to click on the registration page, but I don't see one. So I don't know, maybe if I click this button. And so you're kind of hearing their thought process and what they're doing rather than just kind of staring at them. And do not defend the design. I don't care how much time you spent on this design. If they tell you it's ugly, just take the feedback. Ask them why. Now, it may not mean you need to change the design if it's just a one user or a small case, but you do need to understand the why behind what they didn't like about it. So we want to find why they struggled, they succeeded, and why they might have rated their success or failure the way they did. And we will then use all that data to iterate on the parts they struggled on, fix those, and to strengthen the parts that they thought were good, but might need to be tweaked a bit. A lot of people confuse usability testing with a lot of other things. So here's what usability testing is not. It is not functional testing. It is not a focus group where everybody kind of comes around and like talks about how the design is. You can do that in interviews, but not in a usability test. It's not asking your business partners if they know how to use it. It's not asking users what they want. A lot of people get stuck on this one because it sounds like a good thing, but why wouldn't you ask someone like what they want the software to do? Yeah. Yes. So you brought up the Henry Ford quote. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? And oftentimes, this is because users don't know necessarily the technology. They may not understand the process, and they might be confined in what they currently know. And a lot of people are a little bit tentative to change because if it's not 3 times better, it's worse because of that pain to change. So if you make a product that's at least 3 times better than the old product, people will be delighted to change. But if it's not, expect people to look for their cheese, as Mr. Campbell would say. It's also not a software demo. If you are touching the prototype, interacting with it, or talking with the user about how the screen should be using, that's a demo. You've now crossed into demo territory. The demo shows how amazing you are at using the product. It does not show how amazing the product is. I like to use this. I used to have a string, and I would do like cat's cradle and like tricks on this, but I've since forgotten how to do those. But I'd be like, here, and then I would just hand it to a member of the audience and be like, see how usable it is? Do cat's cradle, and then I'd have to cut them out of the string. But I've since stopped doing that. It's also not expensive or hard to do. You really only need about 5 users, and that will pretty much get you to saturation. Now, when I say 5 users, I mean 5 users of each group. So let's say you're making a software for teachers and students, right? Teachers, they're going to have one use case for the system. Students are going to have another, right? So you would need 5 of each to test each part of that software. Okay, let's do our last technique, design review sessions. That's basically a design critique. This is not design by committee. This is a very structured post-it notes discussion about design reviews. So when we talk about design reviews, you're essentially doing this screen by screen, scenario by scenario. So you show a screen, you explain the scenario that it's used in. Each participant will then silently write down feedback on a sticky note. Everybody gets sticky notes, everybody gets markers, or you could use Miro, or you could use, I want to say Moray, but that's not the right one. Oh, biscuits. Figma. That's what I was trying to think of. And essentially, they write down all their feedback and they stay completely silent. Why would you want people to stay silent when they're giving you their feedback at first? Yes? Yeah, the first person that says something influences the tone. So it's called groupthink, but a lot of people we're kind and we're agreeable, and so it will kind of influence. So what we do is we let people silently write it down. Also, if a big wig or a highly paid staff member is in the office, sometimes people just will see what they do and then agree with them. So we don't want that to happen. We're just going to have them write that down. At the time call, the moderator will take those sticky notes, and then you are the moderator. You get to set the tone. So you read, you lead. So even if you get a sarcastic sticky note, you can read it as genuine, and you can take all the feedback as it comes, and then we'll go point by point by point, and we'll discuss. Now, just because you got a sticky note comment about something doesn't mean you need to make that change. It means you need to have that conversation and think about it. I would not make any design changes in this meeting. What you're going to do is you want to get the pulse of the room and as much knowledge as you can about why people are saying these things. Is it a constraint thing? Is it a technical constraint thing? Is it a business aspiration thing? Is it not part of design standards, etc.? And then after that, go back to the drawing board by yourself and fix it. This is generally the designer that would do this, but whoever's designing would then take that and then they would present it again. Because if you start making design changes in this meeting, it becomes incredibly painful. And it becomes design by committee and no one loves it. Control over the tone, be open-minded, etc. Okay, so now we've got our techniques. So we've level set, we've got our techniques in mind. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the pitfalls. In each pitfall, I'm going to show you one of these techniques that can help alleviate that pitfall. Okay? Any questions before we move into the pitfalls? Yes? So the question was, would you recommend having the product team around you be in the interviews with you, or maybe watching either on a remote feed or something like that? And that is the trick that I use. I generally want to be one-on-one with the user. I will be recording the screens that we are using. And then I will make it fun for the product team by setting up a conference room with a live feed and some popcorn or something. And so it's kind of like almost like an exciting atmosphere for them. And so they'll go in there, and I'll also have one of my UX team that might be on a different project go, and they'll agree to moderate that session, and they'll collect that feedback for me. And so that really helps, because what I've found, and maybe you have too, is if you bring too many people, one, it'll make the user nervous, and two, they'll start helping the user. It's like, stop that! And it's really hard to do that and keep tabs on everything. So it's a little bit easier to do so. Yes? At what point do you go from that's a lot of good feedback, we have some things to change, to okay, back to the drawing board, let's scrap everything? So if you're doing usability testing and user interviews and stuff like that early in the process, as generally you should be, it should be, think of it like designing a house. you want to design the house on paper first. You don't want to start designing the house as you're laying down concrete and studs and plumbing and then go, you know what? I think the bathroom should be on that side and not here. And then you have to rip everything up again. It's the same thing with software development. Instead of wood and nails and concrete, we have code, and everybody thinks, oh, code's so cheap. But you are not. You're not cheap. Your time is very valuable, and that is the wood and the studs that we're doing. So at what point? Generally, if you're early on, you can pretty much rip it up at any point, really. It's if you're seeing a better way emerge, let's say I would say if your process flow is completely mucked up, you want to go from A to C to E to F, and you skipped D and et cetera, and the users are expecting A through F like this, you might want to trash, look at the process flow again, and redo it. And I like to, with the flow, I will literally just wireframe. Rough boxes, writing on the screen, arrows. This is what's going to happen here, 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 and here. And does that match how my users think that process should work? Okay, that's when I would do that. So if you need to completely scrap it, it's extremely expensive. Oftentimes that just doesn't happen. They'll just say, no, we're just going to fix it. And then you're going to be hamstrung and in pain the entire project. And you have my condolences, I've been there. So the following depictions are based on true events. Names and projects have been omitted to protect the misguided. My best Law and Order. Originally, I was going to call this talk the 7 Deadly Sins of UX. But my coworker said that was a little bit negative and said I should change it. So I changed it to Pitfalls, which is a little more fun. So here are the pitfalls. Number 1, just build it. We'll find someone to use it. Has anyone ever experienced this pitfall where you don't know who your user groups are, you're just going to build it anyway? Few of you, yeah. So when I go through these pitfalls, I start hearing chuckles because people are like, yep, my boss did that to me last year. It's the, we have developers that need something to do theory. All right? So just build it. We'll find someone to use it. And you can get these slides on my website, ux.ash. The password is thanks for coming, ! And the T in the thanks is capitalized. So thanks for coming, and you can get these slides. I should have them posted after the fact. You might have there might be an old copy up there, but I'll get the new one. So how is success measured in this environment? I don't know. What's the business goal? What's the user goal? What is the projected return on investment? What are we doing here? It's not only bad user experience, it's bad project management. If you don't know who's going to use it, you should just stop. So I live in Nebraska. It's right next to Iowa. If you've heard Field of Dreams, that old movie, if you build it, they will come. In this case, if you don't know who will use it, don't build it, right? They won't come. Okay. Find the value first. What is your projected return on value, return on experience for the customer? What is in it for them? Okay, and that's what you're looking for. So who wants it and why? What pain are we alleviating? What's the business case? Who are our users that are going to be impacted by this? Who's doing this type of work now if it's internal? Who's currently doing it? Are we doing it at all? Is it necessary to do this work? Or is this work that we don't even need to be in this space anymore? What's the value here? And then we want to identify those target users, and we want to do interviews. Yes, user research. Excellent. I knew you'd get it on the second one. And some of you just might want to see me dance. That's fine. I wouldn't recommend it. So you want to identify those targets. We're going to observe them. Interviews, usability tests, etc. So do your user research. Observe them. Next, if I can use it, they can use it. It's how different am I from the user's theory? If I can use it, they can use it. Has anybody said that, maybe? Yeah, some of you, yeah. So let's talk about you and your users. You probably have a technical background. Your users? You have a working knowledge of the system backend or functionality, or you can find out. Your users? You have specialized lingo, acronyms, etc. Do your users speak those same lingo, acronyms, or etc.? You have a specific work environment. You might have beautiful dual monitors, a nice ergonomic chair. These are things I wish I had. A high processing computer, and an environment where you don't have to wear gloves and you can just be nice and cozy with your coffee, right? The users? When I worked for the railroad, my users were in all weather conditions, hanging on the side of trains. Like, this is freight industry, not passenger. So they had a little bit of a different work environment than me. They could die if they made a misstep. I might trip on a cat, okay? So it's a little different. So the point here is you are not your user. We need to find out about them. So just because you understand it doesn't necessarily mean your user will. So take that with a grain of salt anytime you hear that. So how do we better know our users? Interviews. Yes, we do research. Excellent. Okay, so we talk to them. We do observations. We do interviews. We build personas, which is basically from our research, here is what we think the user's motivations, goals, constraints, etc. are. Some people like to get really cute with personas. They're like, my user's name's Stephanie, and every morning Stephanie likes to go get a coffee and then take a morning jog, and then she uses the restroom. And then, only then, does she pull out her New York Times. It's like, you don't necessarily need all of that color. What you really need are the why, the constraints, the environment, that sort of thing. You don't necessarily need the full story. Now, you can do the full story, but what happens is you start introducing biases. You'll be like, oh, I know a Stephanie. And then you start thinking those biases will start to creep in the more you do that. So I tend not to include those in my personas. Build use cases. What are the users trying to do? That's what a use case is. Now, a lot of people, when they do usability sessions and they build them around use cases, they'll get too technical. They'll start to think of it like an Azure story, or an agile story in Azure. And they'll be like, okay, log in, add socks to cart, check out, and then those will be their tasks. But really, that's not what the user's thinking. The user's thinking, I need to buy some nice wool socks because I'm very cold. So the user task is buy good quality wool socks. Now, that's what the user's trying to do. And so then you would build your usability test around that. So you would just say those simple words. Now, they will then figure out, oh, I need to log in to see my customer pricing. Oh, I need to sort by, or I need to search wool socks, and then I need to sort by star rating. And then I'm going to look at the price and then pick the one that has the nice colors, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not going to tell the user, do these steps. That's how you build software with your agile stories, but that's not how you test it with users. Because otherwise, they're going to go through your designated path instead of the real path they do in the real world. And the real path is the things that you haven't necessarily planned for. And usability testing will help you. Okay. So, research, observe, usability test. All right, let's move on to number 3. The functionality exists, they just need more training. The users just aren't smart enough theory. Has anybody felt that? Does that resonate with some people? Stupid users. Okay, I hear this one a lot, and it may be needed. You may need training. But oftentimes the training that you want to have, if it's an internal, it might be training around the work process. Now, there are some software that are specifically very complicated and do need very complicated training. However, lots of systems don't. If I'm trying to figure out how to buy a train ticket on a train kiosk, do you want me to watch an informational video before I buy my ticket? No. We're going to try to figure this out without training. So training and help documentation are not substitutes for a good user experience. You can't just give maps out of a bad user experience. A good design can walk you through functionality, help when needed, and recover from errors. Boom, boom, boom. Good design does all those usability principles we talked about with safety and memorability, usability, etc. If multiple users are having the same issue, the design needs revision, not the users. If you have to put like a push or a pull on a door, that door may not be designed intuitively. Does anybody else have a problem with doors? They're terrible. That's right. And a lot of it is just because form over function, right? It's the design. They want to make it look nice, not make it look usable. And in context of fire emergencies, for example, when you need to get out the door, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be panicking, perhaps? Are you going to be thinking super logically? Are you going to be reading everything? No. You're going to be like, why won't this door open? So we need to keep in mind the context of use and not just the sunny day, happy day scenarios of them using our software, but also the bad day scenarios, the rainy day scenarios, as we call them. So is it a design issue or a training issue? Let's look in. So if multiple users are reporting the same issue, probably a design issue. If the complaints are only coming from 1 or 2 users, it might just be a preference thing. However, if you're only getting 1 or 2 feedbacks in general, then it's coming from all your users, right? Users clicking and running or interacting with something accidentally. And you'll often see this by the dev team will have questions like, how do I reverse this action? You'll see it on forums, like, how do I undo this thing? Can you roll the database back to where it was yesterday because of the mistake I made? That often shows there was a usability error there. You didn't do a great job of safety in that respect, right? A lot of people taking pictures of this one. It's been a rough one, right? If it's a training issue, user issues may subside after training or help documentation, but the thing is they won't crop back up. If the issue crops back up again, it's a design issue, not a training issue. Low memorability system, low learnability. So if I go on holiday, go to a nice holiday, hang out in Greece, I hear it's warmer there, and then I come back and I have to go ask Bob down the hall, hey, how do you log into this thing again? How do you do this? That is a low memorability system. If only brand new users are experiencing the issue and it does not recur, even if they go on long holiday, etc., probably training. Okay. Any questions about this? Yes.
I thought that you would want it to be as intuitive so that you wouldn't even need training.
Yes.
It would be like business stuff, explain the business, but the software should be so intuitive that you can understand the business.
Yes. Yes. So it should be so intuitive that you don't need training, right? However, there are some extremely complex use cases where it just can't be. For example, our train dispatching system. Now, you're right. For the most part, the train dispatching system, it should work how you expect a computer system to work, right? So if you've used a computer system, you should know like, oh, I should be able to use my mouse and blah, 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 all these things. And it's really the business process of don't click this when a train's on the track because you're going to cause the switch to move and then you're going to derail the train, things like that. There are certain instances where you just can't avoid complexity. But as I said, these are ways to figure it out. And oftentimes these are because of the business behind it, not necessarily because if you put a button where a button's not expected, you can train the heck out of a user. They're still going to make that mistake. I have a personal bone to pick with Azure about their button placement, and they will never get me to unpick that bone until I move that button. So 6 up, iterate on the design, usability test, do design reviews. You can solve those issues. 4, I haven't heard any bad feedback, so guess it must be good. It's the they'll let us know if it's wrong theory. Has anybody heard this one? Yeah, a lot of hands go up. So the thing about that is you need a mechanism for feedback. Now, I once worked on a team where they asked me, hey, could you redesign our feedback tool? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And I said, can I see kind of what feedback is coming in now? And so I kind of know what we want to tailor it toward, because I want to see what's going wrong with the current feedback. And they're like, oh, we don't check it. We haven't checked it in 4 years. Like, well, maybe you should first check your feedback system before redesigning it, right? So you need a mechanism and you need to check it. A lot of users will complain readily, like to people around them, but they may not seek you out for that complaint, especially if it's difficult to complain, unless you've really upset them. Users may also just blame themselves. Oh, I'm just not good with computers. Oh, I just didn't understand this, etc. They might make excuses for the product. They don't want to look dumb. They want to be a team player. They fear offending, especially in internal products. You'll see this where they'll just be like, oh, well, the dev team's smarter than me. Like, obviously, I just don't get it. And that's not particularly good for productivity, is it? So feedback is a gift. Treat it that way. This is the hardest thing for all user experience professionals and any really iterative design team to understand and work with, because you get so attached to your product. But when someone tells you that something isn't working for them, listen to why. And not just the first why, dig into it. Keep going. We call it the 7 whys, right? You're trying to figure out the root issue. It's not, oh, this needs to be a drop down instead of a radio button. Why? So let's talk about how to get feedback. We check in with our users. We set up cadences. Even if we release a product, we might do some usability testing after the fact, especially if we drop in new bug fixes or features. We can do surveys. Those are sometimes helpful if they're worded correctly. It's extremely easy to make a bad survey. Big companies make terrible surveys. Even Gallup, which is like an industry leader in the United States for surveys, I often get surveys from them, and sometimes I'm just like, then I'll send an email to someone that I know that works at Gallup. I'm like, you need to fix this. Anyway, I'm a diva when it comes to surveys. Passive feedback page. So that's helpful if it's visible. So it's just like a feedback button. If they can see it, and by visible, I mean cognitively visible. I don't mean just on the page. What does something that is cognitively visible mean? Yes? Yeah, something that catches your eye, something you see, something you actually can understand where it is. Observe them at their workspace. That's very helpful. And then don't get attached to your design. All right, I'm going to start speeding up now. I think I slowed my voice way down because I got nervous I was going to speak too fast. And so get ready, folks. Listen openly. Don't jump to the defense. So if you see like Post-its and stuff like that, you know. User research, observe, usability test. 5, I know what they need, do this. It's the my experience trumps user research. I've crowned myself. I am the king of all user research, and you don't need to do it because I know my users the best. Oftentimes you'll hear this from subject matter experts. The thing is, subject matter experts are great. However, they are not your users. Sometimes they might have been your users a couple years ago, but they're working on an outdated model, an outdated process. They have lost the pulse, right? Also, if you have a user group of 1, you are essentially coronating a user to rule all of userdom, right? And you're building that software then for that one person and not for your user group at large. Often it can be the highest ranking person in the room. The biggest paycheck gets the talk. They're often time crunched. You might not get a ton of time with them. So what I say, strive for 5, look for those 5 users, and get feedback from them. And don't pick your 5 most experienced users, or don't pick your 5 most common users. Pick some experienced one and pick some noobs. Newbies. New people. Just like, I don't know if this slang works. Get firsthand information and collaborate. User observations and usability testing. Utilize subject matter experts for business goals. They are fantastic for business goals, and they're also fantastic to help you find users usually. And they will collaborate with you on solutions of problems. They're like, oh yeah, I recognize that problem. Let's look at it. Usability test, design review. Boom, 6. I don't know what they want. Just ask them. And we kind of went through this. The customer is always right theory. I don't know if that's here in Europe, but in America, for a while, we're just like, yes, the customer is always right. And it turns out that's not actually true. Sometimes the customer's a jerk. All right. So this is a good thought, but beware. Users are not designers. They don't know what the options are. They don't know necessarily the ins and outs of the tech. They may not have the full picture. They're maybe too close to the process. They may not need a radio button. They may need a revised process. Right? I don't know, just ask them. Well, if you take the request at face value, you're probably only going to scratch the surface. You're looking for the root problem. Keep digging. What are they trying to accomplish with the feedback that they're giving you? What are they actually trying to do with that radio button instead of that drop down? What is the issue that they're currently having and why? What is the pain behind the suggestion? Because often it comes from, this hurts to do. This is annoying to do. There's a story, I can't remember if it was Krug or Nielsen or Norman, but they talk about a video game company, and the devs demo the video game to an executive, and the executive said, yeah, it looks good, but could you add some chrome reflection to the cars? Now, this was in the 90s. Mirror reflections were extremely difficult to do, so they were like, yeah, sure, we can do that. And they went back and they worked on it for a couple weeks, and they came back to the executive and they said, it's going to explode the product. Like we're not sure if we can do it. Why do you want chrome? And he said, well, the cars just don't look like they're moving fast enough. So I thought the chrome would make it look faster. And the developer said, we just make the cars faster. And the executive said, yeah, perfect, that'll work. And that was a quick fix. So you have to ask the why to understand what they're asking you. He didn't actually want chrome, he just wanted the cars to look faster. We can just make them faster. 6 up, observe. All right, here's the last one, then I'll let you guys get out of here. Let's get out there and just fix the usability stuff later. The UX is window dressing theory. This one really makes me mad. But you only get one shot at a first impression, and then you might lose your users. So that could damage your brand reputation, lose trust, lose sales. Everybody's given one of these, right? Would give it 0 stars if I could. So the earlier you inject the UX, the better. A $1 change during coding is a $10 change during design, is a $100 change once live. Think of it in a physical scale. If you are changing the design of your house, super cheap to do it on paper. Not so cheap to do it when you're taking a sledgehammer to the walls, right? All right, so there's a ton of usability benefits to doing this. And there are your techniques. Here are those resources I promised you. I really do recommend Don't Make Me Think. This one's a little painful for developers to read. It's written by a former developer. And then this one's more for design, and then this one's for interviewing users. Probably the best book I've ever read about interviewing users. He just really sums it down really well. Indy Young and Sarah Wachter, I can never say her name right. I'm so sorry, Sarah. They are also great authors. I would highly recommend following them on LinkedIn. And then usability.gov is a great reference for just learning some usability basics. Feedback's a gift. Tell me what you like. Tell me how I can improve. And you can go to my website to get those slides. Thanks for coming is the password. So thank you, everybody. If you have questions, come up and ask me later.